Okay. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Boring AppSec podcast. Today we are excited to have Aryaman Behera with us. Aryaman is the co-founder and CEO of Repello AI, a startup, which recently raised a strategic round from investors like General Catalyst to build an automated AI red teaming and security platform. Aryaman's story does not start in the VC pitch room. It starts in the trenches of offensive security. He's a former bug bounty hunter, and he was the captain of India's top-ranked cybersecurity CTF team, InfoSec IITR. We'd love to hear more about that. And now, as a part of Repello, they've taken a attacker-centric mindset and is building tools to help enterprises find and fix novel vulnerabilities that come with deploying LLMs at scale. We'll talk about shifting from breaking code to breaking models, the technical details behind the automated red teaming products they have, and what the future of AppSec looks like in an AI-driven world. Aryaman, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sandesh, for the brief intro. Thanks, Anshuman, for having me on this podcast. Excited to talk more about our journey here and, about how AppSec is changing in the world of AI here.
Super. Do you want to start off by telling us a little bit of about Repello, and maybe even before that, tell us a little bit about InfoSec IITR, and tell us a little more about that CTF team. I know you guys did some really cool things there.
Sure. So maybe I think it dates back to when I joined IIT Roorkee back in 2019. And, IIT Roorkee has this culture of, clubs where, students organize themselves in soft groups where they, build things just for fun, not for profit, not for proving it to someone, just but because they want to learn. They want to get their hands on stuff. So I was a part of this club called SDS Labs, which was started by the founders of Razorpay, Harshil and Shashank, and a small group that came out of that was called InfoSec IITR. That was a cybersecurity focused group because a lot of the geeks who were building stuff now wanted to break stuff, and that's how that evolution came in. And our alumni found bugs in anything from like V8 engine in Chrome to zero-day vulnerability. So it was a lot of culture that was driven. Now comes CTFs, captured the flag events, and that's like one of the friendliest way for anyone looking to break into cybersecurity who want to learn the fundamentals of like how can you exploit a particular application. Not bug bounty is relatively easier than CTFs, the low hanging fruits, but we went after CTFs where you're given vulnerable set of challenges, and as you solve more number of challenges, you rise your way up in the leaderboard. And InfoSec IITR was a similar CTF team. We rose our way into the leaderboard, like when we like started from first year, and then eventually we made it into global world finals in various CTFs and various cybersecurity competitions in South Korea, France, Russia, and so on. Different ones. So I had one of the most exciting career path of my times in at InfoSec IITR because of mainly the CTFs where you get to learn across different categories, web security, forensics, crypto, now AI security. So as the technology evolves, you get to break it. You have to break it if you want to win the CTF. So that's exactly what we learned in InfoSec, and that was an amazing time.
No, that's awesome. And tell us a little bit more about Repello, and we'll get into InfoSec IITR and CTFs for sure. But tell us a little bit about
Sure.
what Repello does today.
Sure. So Repello is a San Francisco-based AI security company where we work with security teams to continuously identify and neutralize the AI-specific threats with the help of our product like Artemis and Argus. And what I mean by that is new age AI applications are very, very different from traditional software. They are built on prompts, knowledge-based data sets, an intelligence layer, which is the model, which is fundamentally very, very probabilistic as compared to what deterministic software is. So essentially, when you embed human intelligence, which is one of the weakest links in any security breach, and embed it into software, the attack surface area and the overall blast radius increases by a lot. And you need a very different kind of tool set to defend against that and to get a visibility into how broken is your current pipeline, what is the security gap right now. And our tool starts off with the inventorization part where we help you discover all the different AI touch points across your AI infrastructure, put that into one place, catalog it, and then we start off by red teaming it, which is simulating attacks on their AI applications to figure out all the different kind of failure modes, to figure out how this can go wrong from a safety, security, and compliance point of view, and then build adaptive guardrails around this. So the entire process is automated, right from the inventorization to building guardrails, and that's exactly what Repello AI security platform does.
Cool. So, Aryaman, your background is deeply technical and offensive. You've been a part of InfoSec IITR. You've always been into this hacking space, right? But then you've also started a few companies, if I remember correctly, and
Yeah,
now as a CEO, right? You're also focused on things like fundraising, go to market, corporate
yeah.
strategy. What has been the most surprising or challenging aspect of the transition from hacker to being a CEO?
That's an amazing question. So I would say the most important part is, actually shifting from that psychology of thinking like an attacker to thinking about, how to attack this enterprise budget, or how to think about, tactically going after this particular budget. Take into account the sentiments of why a buy in might happen, how it might not happen, thinking about those budgets, thinking about how to build relationships with people, how to nurture them, how to actually help them in their way through, and build the relationship way. So things have changed a lot, because as an attacker you would think about, let me just get a quick bounty and just move on to some other company. But here it's about slowly build relationships that build over time. You need to be patient about it. So that was one of the transition that was not so easy when we started off, but slowly you get the hang of it, and you shift from that attacker mindset to a relationship building mindset, which is fundamentally very different. You know but some of those things help, that because customers understand that, because you have been on the attacker side, you understand how attacks happen, you understand how breaches happen, you have lived through the trenches. And when you've lived through the trenches, you understand that compliance certificates, having SOC 2, ISO, won't really save you from all the attacks that are happening. You need to stay really updated and at least abreast with the new attack techniques and procedures of the attackers. And how do you do that? If you have an attacker who is on your side, that's the best part, to like secure your infrastructure. And that's exactly what we say, which is why the motto of Repello is also security of AI from an attacker's perspective, because a lot of these AI attacks are actually attacking the human cognition, and that's a major part of all the breaches. So if you're able to safeguard from the intelligence era and the human cognition, then we are looking at a secure future here.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned that. So, help us understand. Like, is Repello focused mainly from a black box uh, perspective, where if enterprises have AI applications and whatnot, you sort of approach trying to red team those applications without having access to the source code? Is that the approach that you're going after, or do you also look at the code itself and see how these AI applications are built and sort of have this gray box approach?
Sure. So, for Repello, we started off with a completely black box approach, that we would only need a conversational interface. We won't even need an API. All we would need is a conversational interface of your chatbot or voice bot or any other interface. Just give us access similar to what a customer might have, and we'll figure out everything on our own, be it system prompt. We have a expansive attack graph kind of model, where we kind of try to leak the system prompts, try to fingerprint the underlying model, get more intelligence, and as progressively we get more intelligence, we expand our attack graph overall to see
Mm.
what more things can go wrong. That was from black box point of view, but that was in the era of chatbots when interfaces was all. But if you think about agentic workflows right now, where there is so much interaction happening between interface planning, reasoning, and executing on their own, they making API calls to third party APIs, CRM with different level of role based access control and so on. That is where things get complex. In that case, just just black box access does not solve. You need some sort of gray box access, which is where our platform AgentWiz, that is an open source product, comes into picture, because we don't essentially need access to the code, but we need access to the flow, that how the information is flowing internally. What are the capabilities of this particular AI application, especially if it's a agentic workflow, and using AgentWiz that you can quickly get a threat modeling of your entire agentic system, and you just need to upload that file into our platform, and without giving
Hmm.
any access to the code, which is something that's very crucial to a lot of these companies. They don't want to give, direct access to code, even if you have all the right compliance certificates. They are okay. They are okay to just share the threat model with us, because all we need is a flow. We don't need the entire code base access. That actually helps us in that gray box analysis, as you mentioned, to help to get a much deeper analysis of the entire security posture of their AI systems.
Got it. So, yeah, this is fascinating. So, if I'm understanding this correctly, what you're saying is, you ask your customers to do a threat model of how their AI applications are built and sort of create a workflow. Like, what does this workflow look like? Is it a YAML file? Is it a graph-based interface? What
Yeah,
exactly
so
is this flow? Yeah.
sure. So it's generated by our open source tool called AgentWiz, and essentially
Okay.
it's a configuration file that gets created, which can be easily uploaded into our like Repello AI platform, and it can be a combination actually. Like traditionally, of course, it's a like JSON file, and with
Hmm.
the help of that JSON, we're able to recreate those graph relationships, like again in our platform. But primarily, all we want is that attacker flow. That how is the data flowing? What are the capabilities of the agent? Because there is something called toxic flow, which means is what if agents call a tool and tool call that agent back, and there is this infinite loop
Hmm.
between like agent loop, and that
Yeah.
completely eats away all the tokens. That becomes a part of something called denial of wallet, which is exhausting all the resources. And AI models are expensive to run. Nobody
Yeah.
wants their bills sticking high because somebody want to do a funny business with their agentic workflow. So you need to detect all those things early on, and
Yeah.
AgentWiz helps with that.
Yeah. No, I
Uh,
I totally agree with this idea of, because as I've been exploring this space, especially with MCPs and whatnot, I think
Oh yeah.
data integrations, right? How are you sending your data out to third parties? How are you bringing data in, right? What third parties can communicate with each other? I think it's all those
Yeah.
integration points, right? Like
Yep.
if you have
100%.
a clear understanding of the threat boundaries, I think it makes sense to sort of build this. So you've basically built a way where people can create this file, and then Arpello, the platform, will just understand how your AI
Yep.
systems are working. Yeah, that's
Yep.
that's fascinating. I
Eh,
love it.
can I dig deeper a little bit on this, because now I'm kind of applying this to how we build at CISO. So I'm trying to think how this can help,
Oh
right?
yeah. Sure.
So
Sure,
so
Sandesh.
I guess the question here is so when AgentWiz builds kind of the threat model, how much of, and this is a question I have in general of AI red teaming, right, or AI pen testing, how much of the security of your system, or how much of the exploitability is depending on the underlying model versus the prompt and your workflows, etc., right? Because one of the UX patterns I see very often, and sometimes customers ask us as well, is to say, hey, can you switch around models, right? Can I use my own model,
Yeah.
which is fine tuned with my company data, etc. So my sense is, okay, I might test it with whatever GPT-4o, and then I'm basically running it in production with fine tuned version of GPT-4o, fine tuned with company data, and I have no idea if if now the platform is safe, right? So I guess the question is,
Yeah.
how much of the risk comes from the underlying model, especially if you're using open source models, not SOTA models, and how much of it is
Yeah.
mostly by the workflow?
Sure. That's a great question, Sandesh. So I'll answer it in two ways. So there is one side to it that is safety, and another side to it which is security, and that is exactly what these are the most two important pillars on when we try to do the AI red teaming by the product, right? Uh, by changing the model, so let's talk about when do models change, like when does the entire threat model change, when components change. It could be the when you swap the models, it could be when you add another tool to the arsenal of your agent that expands it agency, gives it more autonomy. It could be as simple as when you change the interface. Like earlier it was just a plain text HTML kind of interface. Now there is a proper markdown rendering in the interface, which could lead to markdown injection, where somebody could redirect the output into a third party, like phishing site or a competitor's website, doesn't matter. So whenever any of these components change, security of that particular AI system gets affected. GPT-4, you replace it with something else, like now that GPT-5 is there, of course the impact will be there, majorly from a safety point of view. But from a security point of view, things don't change much by changing models. But when you add different components to it, when you add, when you give it permissions to access specific APIs and change the permissions, like you updated from read permission to read write, that alone can impact the security posture by a lot, even if you have the entirely same model. So there, I like to think of it like in a sandwich layer. There is the intelligence layer, which is the model. There is a system prompt layer that is like the blueprint of the AI application that directs the model. This is how, this is the purpose of this particular AI system. Here are the toolings, here are the guidelines, here is what you're supposed to do, here is what you're not supposed to do. Like, talking about a competitor, talking about NSFW things, enterprise reliability, the guardrails are embedded. While that's not a best way to protect your system prompts, but a lot of companies have that. And then on top of that, there is a data layer where they augment this particular intelligent system into accepting and processing third party data. Now that third party data could be static, and it could be real time as well, where you give an agent a permission to summarize a website, open a browser, do some things, get that output, and come back. Everywhere there is a trust boundary, there has to be a control and monitoring established if you want to protect that in runtime.
Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense, right? So I like the sandwich analogy that you gave. Um, so I completely agree with that on the agentic applications. That what
Yep,
tools you have access to is kind of probably more important,
yep,
and if that changes, then things
yep.
change. And we had a episode on MCP security, which will hopefully come out
Oh yeah,
before this. With Vineet, and he kind of said the same thing, right? A lot of this is about if you have like a rug pull attack or whatever, where the definitions themselves
yep,
change, then maybe nothing in your
yep,
system changed, but a
yep.
supply chain, but the MCP server you talk to changes, and that will change your threat model. So completely
Hundred
understand that.
percent.
But if you focus a little bit on prompt injection for a second, right? So which is kind of
Yep,
your probably a number one thing for your chat based applications or
yep.
workflow
You're
automation
right.
apps, which are not necessarily agents. So in those
Agents. Yeah,
cases, how much does the model matter? Because there is no
it
tool
matters more.
calling, etc. Okay, so tell us more.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah.
Yeah, so it matters more because as models are getting more advanced, of course, their safety alignment is increasing, but also the capabilities are increasing. So there is a usability safety trade-off, right? And when a model gets more aligned towards not responding to harmful threats and things like that, it becomes a very very different. It becomes much more safer, but at the same time, sometimes you don't want to use those expensive models because anyway expensive. And the second thing is, you wouldn't want that kind of, you have a very simple use case of, let's say, summarization or just like this inquiring about a specific PDF. You don't need that intelligent of capabilities to actually get there, as compared to when you're building agentic workflows. For building conversational AI applications, there are some of the things that you need to be aware about. From the safety side, okay, what exactly is safety for me? Because maybe, if you're an automotive car company, car dealership company, if a user asks your chatbot how to build a bomb and it answers that, it might not be a big problem for you, because the security company would think like of it as self attack. If it's a self attack, then whom are you actually hampering? You're not affecting anyone. But at the same time, if you're attacking the memory layer of this entire chatbot, where there is a possibility of multi-user context bleeding, that is, you affect the knowledge base that is shared by all the users, you inject some malicious canary tokens there, and that gets embedded, that gets processed by the LLM, and that ends up disrupting the, all the behavior of entire, all the users. And somehow now they're talking in pirate tone, now they're talking in a very very rogue manner, not talking in proper English. That is a big problem for you. Those are some of the things that
Yeah.
is of prime importance. And
Yeah.
models, sometimes if they're safer, then they prevent such attacks, otherwise they
Yeah.
won't.
So I'm thinking of a little more like an enterprise setup, right? Where you're
Yep,
probably using Azure OpenAI or whatever, AWS
yep,
Bedrock, and then Cloud on it, etc. Right?
yep,
So when you change your model because whatever
yep,
3.5 sound is not supported anymore, and you want to move to 3.7, would that
yep,
should the and nothing else in your application changes, and you
yep,
run your
yep,
benchmarks, your application works as expected. Would
yep,
that should that be is that sufficient of a change management trigger to say, hey, we need another security assessment at this point, or
yep,
because
100%.
oh okay, okay.
It
Hmm.
needs to be. The model is the intelligence layer getting swapped, and you need to check if the existing failure modes that were discovered in the previous scan hold up in the newer model. You have to
Hmm.
make sure that happens. And in talking about context and talking about some patterns that we've seen, most of the times, like these patterns actually emerge when more intelligent models are swapped into as compared to the previous models. So that's
Are
there.
there specific not vulnerabilities, but like specific patterns which are relevant to certain models? Like, do we know if 3.7 sonnet is more susceptible to certain kinds of issues than 3.5 sonnet? And is that information like available to be easily consumed? I mean, I'm kind of
So
thinking of how CVs work with open source tools, right? I mean, you know a library
yeah,
version and you know exactly what's wrong with them.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I
yeah.
haven't seen that happen a lot with, say, models.
Yeah. So the interesting part about CV is it's deterministic. You can replicate it, you can reproduce it, and it will work. But with the case of AI application, it's not the same because you have to test it 10 times, 15 times, and maybe even if it succeeds one time, what your goal, right? For example, system prompt leak, you just need to get it right once. Once it's right, you're done. If it's okay if it doesn't work the rest of the 9 times. So coming back to the point that you mentioned about like do we have some patterns around this? Of course, we do have some patterns internally, and that's a part of our threat intelligence repository regarding which model is safer for a particular use case. And we have that internalized at we do give it out to our customers as well. Uh, Primarily models which are trained on big common data like Llama, GPT, Anthropic, and so on. They have a bias for being safer in Western languages and English as compared to in Indic languages or languages of the Middle East. There was a customer in Turkey that we were working with, and they did not they did not use GPTs and Anthropic at all because of the language support. Language support was terrible in that, and especially I'm talking about the language safety part. Of course, it was conversing well in the Turkish language. That was not a problem at all, but about safety things, it was much probable to prompt injection in a particular language of the Middle East as compared to one in the Western side or English. So when languages change, the vulnerability or the safety score also changes by a lot, and that is something to be kept in mind if you have an international audience.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I think it's interesting to kind of figure out what happens to CVD when you have like non-deterministic behavior. I know there's some
Oh yeah,
efforts, like there's something called AIVD which has come up, and I think the
yep,
MLSecOps community as well, has some bug bounty
yep,
platforms which are kind of specific just to this, which kind of talk about it. But yeah, definitely kind of like a super interesting space for someone who thinks about this full time, I guess.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to flip this slightly, and so speaking about what you are building at Repello, uh, I'm assuming you're also using LLM AI behind the scenes to do the red teaming, right? I'm this is
So
just a guess.
yeah, there's an interesting patch to it, but I'll let you complete first.
Yeah, so I guess the question is, as new models come out, so let's say when GPT-5 came out, do you actually change the model internally of how you do the red teaming? And I think as a follow-up to that, what I am sort of finding is as models are getting more matured, as the safeties are getting more stringent, these models will outright refuse you to build you some exploits and whatnot, right? So how do you sort of build a platform where you're
Hmm.
trying to a red team, where you're trying to build exploits, we're trying to hack AI applications, but as the models kind of change and improve, those
Hmm.
capabilities are actually getting reduced. How do
Hmm.
you sort of see this
So
landscape evolve?
got it. So there is an interesting catch to it. You'll be surprised to know that you know. About this particular company where they were trying to use AI to break applications, AI to pen test. Not to break AI, but AI to break applications. The security using AI kind of market, and they had a very surprising result when they swapped GPT-4 with GPT-5 and the attack success rate metric. That's the metric that we use ASR. Attack success rate increased by a lot. Increased by a lot. I can't give a number to it, but it was more than 2 times of the initial results that were happening. Why? Because of course the safety alignment does come into picture where safety alignment for humans, but it is also about the capability for security teams. If you tune it the way where it is meant for a security team and it is meant for a particular use case, and you tell GPT-5 that you prompt GPT-5 in the meta prompts that it is meant
Mm,
for these things, it will help you in the best possible way to actually figure out those exploits, because the end goal is here not to attack and attack any real life AI application to cause harm to a business or humans. but it is to preempt those harms. So everything is on the
Yeah.
gray side
Yeah.
here, right? Like, and you can use the same attacks to attack someone or maybe defend someone. So you tune GPT-5 that it is meant to defend and run a preliminary scan of the red teaming. And because red teaming is such a popular term, and of course GPT-5 knows about it, and it will help you with the exact workflow. It would not block you. If it blocks you, then they miss out on the entire use case. Which I mean, and security. Teams automating their workflows internally using AI is a very, very big use case, and they wouldn't want to stop that from happening. So it's only
Yeah.
increasing. But internally at Repello, we use not purely LLMs. We have a different orchestration that we use. Earlier, we were using pure LLMs, but as you mentioned, like companies like Anthropic, OpenAI, they have amazing safety alignment. So inherently,
Mm.
they were not able to generate those attacks with that level of efficiency that we wanted.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because it is about causing harm to a human, right? That's exactly what the payload meant for whenever it's meant for a chatbot. We used a different architecture internally where we have our own data set and we wanted to get an architecture like a mixture of experts kind of model, and sometimes in some use cases SLMs as well for smaller
Mm.
use cases. And we have
Mm.
that entire orchestration now, which is a much better piece that has a entirely a better ASR metric. Like, that's the benchmark that we're looking at. It's better, and we don't use GPT-5 as of now yet. We have experimented with that, but it was great for automating penetration testing rather than automation of LLM red teaming here. So that's the broad split.
Interesting. Yeah, I think speaking about GPT-5, when GPT-5 came out, I saw a bunch of mixed reviews from practitioners, right? Like
Yeah,
some people were
yeah,
happy with it, some people weren't happy. I think there was
yeah,
one blog from Expo where they kind
yeah.
of walked over, like how they use GPT-5. They basically created a
Hmm.
sandbox environment and they
Yeah,
let GPT-5 loose, right? So
yep,
basically, based on my understanding, please correct me if wrong, it sounds like if you give GPT-5 the tools it needs, the access it
yep,
needs, it can actually find really valuable stuff as compared to
yep.
much
It
previous
can.
models, right?
It can.
But it,
It
but it
really
is
can.
it, it is just because enterprise have the like so many security controls, mitigations, infrastructure, and whatnot, that if you use GPT-5 in those kind of environments, the outcome or the output that you would expect from GPT-5
Hmm.
isn't necessarily at par. Do you agree with that?
Yep, yep. You got it right. You framed it and articulated in the best possible way for your audience.
Okay. Well, I'm glad. Okay.
That sounds like a GPT saying it, but fine.
I don't know if Anshuman is using GPT overlay or something.
Hey, my life, personal and professional, is fully AI immersed. So yeah, it's up to the viewers' discretion. Anyways, I digress. Um,
Yeah, no
I,
problem.
I I did want to talk about the platforms that you're building at Repello, Artemis and Argus, right?
Yeah.
Let's maybe go into Artemis a little bit. Can you explain what this platform is meant to do or help your customers?
Sure. So Artemis is our flagship AI red teaming platform where it you can quickly connect your AI application, be it of any modality, voice, text, image, vector DB agnostic, model agnostic. You just have to connect the interface to our, Artemis platform, and we quickly hook it up and spin some attacks on top of it by getting the business context, the system prompt, the underlying model. We figure all those things on our own, and we try to understand and give you a overview of what are the failure modes for this particular AI asset, uh, depending on safety, security, and compliance score. Once the vulnerabilities are discovered, and we try to come up with payloads on the fly. The threat intelligence that we've built, there is an offensive security engine on top of it that marries the context of the system prompt, the business context, which industry this is particularly deployed in, which language the users are primarily using. A lot of those things are combined in order to come up with specific attack goals. It could be leakage of system prompt, it could be leakage of like cross user session data, attacking the memory layer. We figure all that out and we map out the attack surface area. Once we map out the attack surface area and the recon part, then comes the red teaming part where we generate goals. What should go wrong ideally? We try to make that happen through iterative prompting. Sometimes it's not just single turn. It does not always work in like one prompt, but you have have a multi-turn conversation. That is like you have a couple of conversations back and forth, and on the fifth, sixth attempt, it actually works out, and the attack succeeds. So we have all those different kind of failure modes. We do that. We put it into a dashboard, and we map those vulnerabilities to standards like OWASP, MITRE, NIST, and so on. And that gives you an idea of you can sort by severity, business priority, and so on. And then you get remediation playbooks. Sometimes the remediation playbooks is as simple as like prompt patching, that changing some
Mm.
things in the system prompt, hardening it. But in a lot of the cases, that does not help solve the problem. You need a runtime security product to continuously monitor, flag, and block any malicious input or output that is flowing through your trust boundaries. Now, how do you do that? You build adaptive guardrails. That is where the next product Argus comes into picture, and we've kind of worked in unifying the guardrails, because traditionally guardrails and like the alternative web application firewalls have been hated by the security community because of so many high false positives, right? And we didn't
Mm.
want that to happen to AI applications. So what we did was, we have a continuous feedback loop between the offense Artemis and the defense Argus. So Argus is calibrated by the red teaming analysis of this Artemis. So when Artemis comes up with a few vulnerabilities, it automatically creates policies in the guardrails regarding what
Mm.
are the failure modes to be prevented. And it happens in a continuous manner with every model getting changed, with whenever the threat model gets updated. The model changes, the API endpoints emerge, new tools added to the agents, everything. Whenever there is a change to the threat model, you need to run a scan and figure out if there needs to be something that is like you need to run a like red teaming scan, and that becomes a policy for the guardrails automatically. And that's how we're thinking about the securing the homegrown AI applications overall.
Got it. So you've basically created this feedback loop, right, where the
Yep.
system learns based on the offensive sort of traffic or
Yep.
analysis that it is seeing. Yeah,
Right.
that's. I think that kind of goes towards this idea of self improving systems using
Yep.
AI, right? Where
Yep.
if you
Yep.
have high fidelity data information of what is vulnerable, how it was vulnerable, and how you can prevent it from happening again. You could
Yep.
essentially take all of that information and feed it into your engine, right? So, are you using any sort of techniques, approaches? Are you using
Yeah.
AI in like all of this? Can you give us maybe a high level of
So
how this system actually works?
sure. So of course there's a reinforcement, learning feedback loop in place here, where whenever we have given our customers autonomy to flag these false positives. So let's say there's a customer in HR tech industry, and they have flagged a particular thing, like they have flagged a false positive, and there are a bunch of it. It's not just one, maybe like a couple of false positives. It goes through a feedback loop where the next training of the new version of the judge model, the model that evaluates if this particular result is a vulnerability or not, that gets improved. That gets improved on the feedback that is received from our customers, from our own analysis as well. Sometimes if we're if the customers agree for it, of course, if it's not a on-premise deployment, we do have those things where we figure out a way to improve that over time. And the interesting part here is, most of the improvement is actually led by improving the threat intelligence. For example, you work with a company in HR tech having a specific application architecture, and they have this particular model plus this type of this pattern of system prompt and this application architecture. When that changes, that is when we see majority of the new attacks coming up. And when you switch from HR tech industry to the exact same application in, let's say, legal tech industry or automotive industry, the failure modes from business point of view change a lot. And like compliance tailwinds, of course, compliance, like if you're in a healthcare company, you wouldn't want to talk about something like where your chatbot reveals sensitive PII or patient records and things like that, making you HIPAA uncompliant. In a similar case, a automotive dealership company wouldn't worry so much about that. So for an automotive dealership company, it's actually a false positive if you run the same attack on top of it, right? So those nuances have to be managed well. And over 2 years of gathering threat intelligence, of red teaming, establishing those feedback loops and improving the data set over time, we've established a framework to have that self-evolving engine where we just feed it into threat intelligence. You say that, right? Feed the beast, and eventually it improves over time. You just need, of course, you need still some human feedback. You need some of those things in place, but it's largely automated now.
Yeah, that's cool. So it sounds like you have some kind of a framework that allows your system to self improve, but then you might also have specific customer feedback loops that kind of learns based on the customer feedback itself, right? And you've automated this entire thing. Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Um, awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is very interesting because I haven't, at least I haven't I read a bunch of resources and blogs about how all of this works. But if there's anything that you want to share with the viewers, or if you have any blogs, please let us know. We
Sure,
can
we'll do
happily
that.
put it in the show notes. Cool.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sandesh.
Yeah, I want to switch gears a little bit. Did you want to go deeper into this, Anshuman?
No, I'm good. Yeah, let's move
Okay,
on.
so one of the questions I want to ask you, and one of the main reasons I want to have you on the show, as we want to have you on the show as well, is kind of all these cool viral videos that you tend to make with Repello, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, it's not a new technique to say, hey, we'll show attacks and that's how we'll get attention. That's a good way of doing it. It's like proof of work
yeah,
almost, right? You're
yeah,
showing, no, not telling almost. So that's great. But tell us a little bit more about the about the stuff you did with Cluely, with Perplexity, etc. How do you guys think about
yeah.
this internally? I mean, you just let loose a bunch of AI researchers as soon as anything new launches, or how do you think? How do you think about kind of this process internally, and what
Yeah.
happens once you kind of publish these videos
Sure,
usually?
sure. Sure. I can tell you a bit about this strategy overall. So, let's talk about outbound versus inbound, because at the end you need to get brand, you need to build that credibility, you need to have that visibility that people know about, your company. Now, because we are a security company, we get lucky, and we get more lucky because we are a AI security company having AI red teaming as the flagship product, that we get to do those things as a liberty because we are not doing it for adversarial purposes. Not we don't have any bad motives towards it, but we want to showcase to the security community that what is the blind spot. You guys are building these applications internally, you're using these applications internally, but this is how things can go wrong if you don't have the right safeguards in place, and it's a way to show that. Now, about that, how do we come up with those things? I think broadly, if you get it's all about eyeballs. Everyone's fighting for competition attention in this economy. Everyone has the right product, everyone's got the right product to right insights to build things. But how do you crack distribution here? How do you crack distribution where the right audience actually knows about you, they respect your work, they like your work that you guys do, and you should do cool stuff. We just wanted to do cool stuff, and that how the entire idea came out of it. It was not a strategically planned thing that, okay, we are gonna attack these applications, and let's see how can we generate marketing dollars around it, and compete for that. It was mainly around, we're doing cool work, we're breaking these new age AI applications, new age agentic browsers, and so on. Let us show the community. Let us show the community, what we're capable of. And we made in a very, of course, we follow the right responsible disclosure practice, and then eventually release all those things. But we saw that after we did a couple of things, on Cluely, on Gemini, and so on, people started appreciating that. A lot of CISOs started reaching out to me. A lot of customers, because some of the posts that got a million impressions and so on, that actually started bringing in a lot of leads, like qualified leads, into the website and actually converting them into real customers. Which is when we started to double down on this approach, and we thought, okay, like whenever there's a new AI application that comes in, we have to just break it light. We don't have to do a hard attack, but we have to do a soft attack that demonstrates that this particular component of this entire AI application is vulnerable. And the competitors of those applications, or the competitors of customers who are building similar applications, because everyone looks up to each other, they reach out to us. If you break a particular company, like let's say Perplexity, the competitors of Perplexity will reach out to you, and we have seen a similar pattern that works out. So
And
that was the entire.
yeah. And where do you
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
go
draw
on.
the line between kind of like responsible disclosure, right? Because some of the things that you've shown are like the Cluely stuff, for example, and you know more about this attack than I do, are like fundamental issues with non-deterministic systems. It's not something they
Yep,
can
yep,
fix out there, right? So how do you think
yep.
about these?
So
So where does does
yeah.
responsible disclosure, is that sufficient? Do you wait for it to be fixed? Is it even possible to be fixed? Is it just a way to showcase a attack pattern through a company? I kind of feel like the rules of vulnerability disclosure, responsible disclosure changes with AI a little bit.
Yep.
It
Yep.
wasn't like
Yep.
before where you find something, you wait for them to fix it. As long as they fix it, you can talk about it. And if you can't fix it, then
Yeah.
both of you are bug bounty people more than I am, so you guys know about this better. But what happens to a non-deterministic system, right? Maybe they think they fixed it, but it's actually still possible with some other
Yep.
vector or with some other model underneath. So how do you think about that?
You're right. You're right on point, Sandesh, on this, because sometimes it's not easy to fix these applications or fix the security issues in these applications. What you can do is you can manage it. You can manage it in a way that does not cause a lot of brand reputation damage, does not cause a lot of impact if something goes wrong. By having the right security by design principles, having the right things in place, and warning the user. Sometimes maybe it is as simple as changing the interface. Like in MCPs, we have this something called permission fatigue, that you just have to click on allow all the time. But what if, a malicious MCP server decides to turn rogue? They update their instructions, and because you're using a remote MCP server, and in the rug pull attack, you just clicked allow for a malicious permission or for a malicious workflow. You're done. You just all you need is a very small thing. So sometimes warning the user and having those right things, just changing the interface and having those right policies, like the product principles in place, often help in reducing the impact of the overall attack. And we have a standard 24-hour disclosure, 24-hour policy. We just ask them to respond in 24 hours. If they acknowledge it very well, sometimes they don't acknowledge it, so we just go ahead with posting about it, because we of course we can't just wait for a year to for the response. So we go with that. Of course, there is a gray line to it. There is, you have to draw that line. We try not to attack the infrastructure and not to cause any financial damage. We just try to demonstrate a very, very simple vulnerability, like a very small vulnerability that does not cause any availability damage on their end, does not bring down their SLAs. And we try to be very responsible in that particular scenario. If there is a sensitive information that is getting leaked, we don't do that. We redact it, but we show it enough that it is visible that okay, some information is actually getting leaked. Or we create our own tenant and try to leak our own information, which is perfectly fine, which is not a big deal. So we try to do some of those cues to demonstrate the actual attack, but the focus here is to demonstrate the attack. If that gets demolished, or the essence of the vulnerability is not demonstrated, then we don't consider that as a success.
Yeah,
Now,
I actually have a spicy take here. So
Okay. Yeah.
most of sort of these AI companies, let's take Cursor or
Yeah.
Perplexity or like any of these companies that are building these AI native applications. I think their defense whenever a new vulnerability comes out in their product is that we accept the users to see what they're doing, to see what they're
Yeah.
accepting, to see what they're rejecting, right? So according to these companies, it's almost a feature. It's not a bug, and I totally get it, right? Where if you're showing the end user that you're making this MCP connection, do you want to allow it or not? And if the user is clicking on allow, yes, you have done whatever you could from a product standpoint, but at the end of the day, it's the user who's giving you that right to do so. So I think this model where humans have to be in the loop for some of
Yeah.
these AI applications isn't going to be enough, at least as
Yep.
we
You're
move
right.
more towards fully autonomous systems, right? So I think we have to start thinking about solutions where AI is kind of used to find these sort of attacks and also to stop them from happening, because I think at the end of the day, depending
Exactly.
upon humans to do the right thing isn't going to be enough, right? We all know
Yep.
humans are the weakest link, and that will continue to be the case, right?
Yeah. It's a people problem. You're right. On point.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's a spicy take, but it's just like I think there's too much expectations from enterprises and companies on these AI native companies to make these things secure by default. Right. It's just like the nature of the technology is like such that
Yeah.
injection is very difficult to protect against, right?
Yeah.
So
It is and especially indirect prompt injection, where
yeah,
it could be like white fonted malicious instruction in a PDF that gets processed by the LLM, but it's not visible to human eyes. So
that's
it's a
right.
attack on human cognition, if you think about it, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
it's very hard to protect. It's not simple to protect. Gemini claims to like be secure against indirect prompt injection, but
Yeah.
we demonstrated how even a very powerful model like Gemini 2.5 Pro is not susceptible. It is susceptible to indirect prompt injection. So I think there's a long way to go. It's not a solved
Yeah,
problem. We have to manage it.
yeah,
We can't like 100% solve it. Eventually, of course, models get better. They will be, as humans, we are able to identify, right? This is a problem. If I give you a malicious PDF, and if you have your forensics tool, and if you have everything, you have the right tool set, you will be you will be able to identify like this is something wrong. This is something very different from the original goal. It is misaligned with the original goal.
mm,
We need intelligent systems to get there, and once they're there, I think we'll get there to eventually solve it.
mm. Yeah. Sandesh, do you have something?
No, I think that's pretty much all I had. We're pretty close to time as well.
Yeah, I just have one final question for you, Aryaman. So, looking ahead 3 to 5 years from now, right? Many enterprises will be deploying not just single LLMs. There'll be a combination of multiple LLMs,
Yep,
SLMs, whatnot, right?
yep, yep.
Hosted on prem, hosted on the cloud. So, from a like this architecture point of view, where you have multiple agent architecture that are fully autonomous, right? What new category of attacks do you think will be dealing with, and how can we prepare for those kind of attacks?
Sure. So, Anshuman, I think the majority of the attacks that I'm seeing here are actually coming up with new interfaces. So, attacks on text-based applications were something very basic. Indirect prompt injection led there. When we talk about multimodal applications, image has a lot of potential because the latent space is much larger. So, the possibility of embedding malicious, like even a malicious pixel can go pretty wrong for a like a system that is depending on image processing capabilities and so on, and similar for voice. So as the interfaces are changing, we need to also evolve our vulnerability scanning systems to keep it adhere. I know it was not the case in traditional security ever. It was all like very standardized interface, but with AI native applications, it's changing. And most importantly, you need to have a clear visibility into the threat model, which is, what
Threat
Sandesh
model. Yeah,
and the team is like definitely can help in. But having the threat model right and having continuous
yeah,
visibility over it is crucial to defending your AI application.
yeah. Absolutely on point.
Yeah. No, I
Okay.
think I think yeah. Uh, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, like every time I think in every 3 to 5 years when there's a new technology that comes in, my security brain gets a little bigger because I kind of feel like sometimes I feel like it's the same damn attacks again, right? Over
Yeah,
and over again in the last 15 years. But
yeah,
sometimes certain ways the things happen is kind of different. So yeah, a lot of what you said made a lot of sense. Really excited to see what's going to happen in the next few years on AI security, and looking forward to see what Repello will do. So yeah,
for sure.
um, yeah.
Exciting times.
Yeah. Ariman, thank you so much for joining. And yeah, keep building Repello, I
It was an
guess.
honor.
Wow.
Thanks a lot
Yeah.
for having me on the podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you,
It was
Arman.
Thank you.
great
Appreciate
talking
it.
to you.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us. If you like the show, please share this with your friends and colleagues. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach Anshuman on Twitter at Anshuman_BH. That's ANSHUMAN_BH. And me, Sandesh, at Juba on Jeans. That's JUBBAONJEANS. See you next time.